Hi everyone, Clayton here at etrailer.com. Here at etrailer.com, we install, test, and review a lot of different products to help you as a customer make a more educated decision before your purchase. Today, we're going to be working on a 2015 Toyota Sienna. We're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Universal 7-Way Kit. Our 7-Way is going to allow us to hook up to a lot of different trailers. Not only are we going to be able to hook up to more trailers, we can also use trailer brakes. So we can tow a lot safer. We don't have to worry about our trailer pushing us down the road. It's just going to be a lot better to live with. Now, one cool feature of this is not only are we going to get the 7-Way, we also get a 4-Way. But you do want to keep in mind, you do have to have a 4-way harness installed already on your Sienna. If you don't have one, you can find one here at etrailer.com. This is what our 7-Way is going to look like installed. It looks factory on the back of our Sienna. You do just want to keep in mind it does hang a little bit low, so if you're going over anything bumpy, you just want to be cautious. Now it looks really nice, like I said. Our cap is sprung, so we don't have to worry about it staying open. There's a nice sealant on the back side of our cap down here. That way when we are plugged in, or if it's like this, we don't have to worry about any debris or water getting into our plug. And like I mentioned, it does offer us the usability with a 4-way, so we don't have to buy another adapter. We can still hook up to any trailer we might be towing. My favorite feature of this kit is that it does include everything we need to get it installed. That comes in super handy because we don't have to try to hunt down other stuff, or we don't have to worry about missing components. Another cool thing is it does include circuit breakers. So if you are running a brake controller, you don't have to hunt one of those down as well. And the advantage to running a 7-way over just a 4-way is we are going to have 3 more of those functions. And the lighting functions that are going to be included with the 7-way are going to be our brake lights, our tail lights, our left turn, our right turn, our trailer brakes, our charge line, and our auxiliary. And in terms of installation, getting our 7-way installed really is not going to be that bad. Hardest part is going to be running all of our wiring and making our connections to the brake controller if you are running one. With that being said, I'll show you how to get it installed now. To start our installation, you do want to make sure that you have a 4-way. In this case, we have our 4-way wiring ran right here. We're now ready to add our bracket, but you might want to pick up a long no-drill bracket here at eTrailer. It's just going to make it a whole lot easier to mount our wiring. So we can grab our hardware. We'll just drop that through the top of our bracket, and then add it to the bottom hole. We now want to grab our 7-way with our wires. We're just going to slide these through our bracket. Slide these through just like that. And then once we get to the 4-pole side, we'll just drop that through the back of the bracket and pull it out to the side and add it there. We now want to grab our provided mounting hardware, and we'll just get our 7-way set in place. We'll just loosely install these now. That way we can move it around to line up our other holes. We'll plug that 4-way back into our bracket on the side. Now we're just going to push all of our wires up and over our hitch, between our hitch and our underbody panel. Now this is just going to help conceal them. And if you'd like, you can actually remove your underbody panel and just kind of mount everything underneath of it. We're now ready to push our 4-way between our hitch too. But before we do that, I'm going to cut our dust cover off. Since we'll be connecting this into our new harness, we're not going to need our dust covers, so I went ahead and just cut the dust cover off this one as well. We have our 4-way pushed down through here. We'll connect the new part of our 4-way to that. Now this connection isn't super strong. I would recommend running a zip tie around your connectors just to help hold everything together. We'll just push that zip tie through, and then we'll tighten it down. This is just going to help hold everything together over time, so we don't have to worry about it. Just like that. Now we will trim back both sides and just run electrical tape around it to ensure a good connection. Now looking at our wires. Our blue wire is going to connect to our brake controller inside of our Sienna. Our yellow wire is going to be our reverse light. Our white wire is going to be our ground. And our black wire is going to run to power. Now in this application, we are not going to be using our yellow wire, so I'm just going to zip tie that up here. That way we don't have to worry about it, and we'll just keep it out of our way. Our kit is going to include this long gray wire, but inside of this there's actually going to be 2 wires. There's going to be a black and a white. Our black wire is going to connect to our power here, and we're going to use our white wire to connect to our blue wire. Now what we're going to do, as you can see there's one side here, I just tucked this under our underbody panel. That way we can make our connections right here. Now we just want to strip back our ends. We now want to grab the butt connector provided, and it already comes installed, which is pretty nice. We just want to put our crimps on there, hold it in place. Then we can insert our black wire right here and then crimp it down. Do the same thing for the blue wire. Now I have them crimped down. You do want to give them a tug, make sure it's secure. Once it's secure, we're going to add some electrical tape just to keep the connection secure due to the fact that these are not heat shrink butt connectors. And if you did want to use heat shrink butt connectors, you'll have to purchase those separately here at etrailer.com. We already had this hole cut out for our hitch. We're just going to push our wiring through that and pull it on the other side. Just like so. Now we're ready to run our ground. To mount our ground, we have an available space right here in the hole that we cut out. That is just the bottom of our body. We want to grab our white wire and provided self-tapper. Now we can run our ground. Just like that. We can clean all this up with some electrical tape and zip ties. Now we're just going to add some wire loom to this to help clean it up and make it look a little bit nicer. Again, this isn't necessary, but it is going to look a lot better behind our Sienna. We're now ready to run our wiring from the back of our van to the front. I just pushed that gray wire with our black and our blue wire under our underbody panel, and it came out right here. Now I'll go ahead and run it the rest of the way, and then we'll come back and show you how we did it. Our wire comes out right here. Then I zip tied it to a bracket right here on our body and kept it up and out of the way of the muffler. Then I ran it up and over our exhaust hanger, zip tying it right here. Then I followed some factory lines, zip tied it here, and comes up and over our cross member and down beside our fuel tank. Then it runs this way, all the way down the side of our fuel tank. Then comes over right here, and I just tucked it through this underbody panel and pulled it out on this side by our factory lines. I then ran it down our lines like this, and then up and right here. Now I want to grab an airline tube to help pull our wires up. You can also use a string with a nut on the end or a coat hanger, really just anything you have available to get that wiring from the bottom up to the top. We'll take our airline tube, try to find the most straight route staying away from our engine. Then we'll push that down and go back underneath and electrical tape our wire to our airline hose. We're now ready to pull our wiring up and pull it tight. Now we can just drape it over like this. What we're going to do is cut back this insulation and pull our wires apart all the way back to right about here. You do want to be cautious when doing this, not to cut the wires on the inside. I suggest just doing a little bit at a time until you get to your desired spot. We now have all of our sheathing stripped back to right here, which is going to be perfect. We can now zip tie this up to this factory wiring and then find a hole in our firewall to run the white wire through. You can see our white wire here goes back towards our firewall. Now this part is pretty tough. I suggest grabbing a really long Phillips head screwdriver and pushing it through our grommet. Our grommet is going to be located right down here on the back of the firewall, and it's going to come out between our gas and our brake pedal. Right here is where our wire came out. So now would be a good time to cut our white wire, but we are installing a brake controller and we're going to need to run a wire to power. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut our white wire for our brake controller here. And then I'm just going to put black tape around it to help mark that this one is going to be for our brake controller. Then what we're going to do is run our excess white wire back through that hole and out to our battery for our brake controller. Now this is just a lot easier to do now than to backtrack and do it later. And now with our wire ran in from our 7-way, we're going to use the excess wire and run it back out to our battery for a connection to the battery for our pigtail harness. Now what I did was I just cut this white wire and put some tape on the wire from the brakes on the 7-way to mark our wire, and I taped it to a long drill bit, and I'm just going to push that right back through our hole in the firewall. We are now ready to install our circuit breaker. We're going to mount it right here on the passenger side fender, right there, using the provided self-tappers. We'll just hold that in place. That one in. Now come back and add our other screw. Now I'm going to grab our power wire. We'll just run this behind our wires there, just like so. Kind of push them underneath so we still have access to our air box. With these right here, we'll measure it off and cut it. We can now strip it back. And we can grab a small yellow ring terminal provided. We'll now slide that into our ring terminal and crimp it down. We want to take this side of our wire and put it on the silver post of our circuit breaker. Again, this is the wire coming from our 7-way. So we'll slide that over here and then reinstall our nut. We'll just leave that hand tight for now. Now we want to grab the extra wire that we cut off, and we're going to strip back a little piece of it like that. We're going to add our small yellow ring terminal to this and crimp it down. We can now add this to the copper post. We now can grab a 3/8 socket and just snug these down. Now you don't want to put too much torque on them because it actually will break our circuit breaker. So we just want to snug them down. Just like that. Make sure they're not going anywhere. It's nice and secure. We now just want to run our wire over to the battery. I'm going to put it under our battery support, like so. Just kind of tuck it down behind everything. Then around the side of our battery, kind of measure it off to right there. We will cut it back. And then we're going to strip back our end and add our big ring terminal. Just like that. Give a little tug, make sure it's secure. Now I'm going to come back and just zip tie up our wires to keep them nice and secure, and we'll make our battery connection a little bit later. So in our application, we are going to be installing a brake controller. However, if you are not, you can go ahead and connect your power wire to your battery using a 12mm socket on our nut on the back side there. And if you are installing a brake controller, you can follow along with us. I just went ahead and pulled a ground wire through the hole in our firewall. I used green since we're already using 2 white wires just to make it a lot more simple. And again, this is going to be our blue wire that connects to our pigtail harness. This is going to be our power wire and our ground. Looking at our pigtail harness, our black wire is going to be power. Our red wire is going to go to our stoplight switch. Our white wire is going to be our ground, and our blue wire is going to connect to the blue wire from our 7-way. We can start with our ground wire. We'll simply strip that back. Then we can add a butt connector. And I do like to leave everything kind of loose down here. That way it's easier to kind of tuck up and hide. And then if we ever have to come back and make any adjustments, there's going to be a lot more room to work. And that's really nice when we are working underneath the dash. We can now add our white wire to our butt connector with our green wire. We'll crimp that down. And now I'm going to grab our power wire and strip it back. And for this one, we will be adding a yellow butt connector since our wires are pretty big. Then we'll be grabbing the black wire from our harness and tapping that in here, or adding it to our butt connector, I should say. If you remember, we added our black tape to this white wire to tell us which one was our blue wire. We can now remove that tape. Now with our tape removed, we can strip it back. I do need to trim a little bit of that off. I just wanted to get a good clean cut. Now twist this. We're going to be adding a yellow butt connector to this as well. We'll add our blue wire to the other side. Crimp that down. Our next step is to tap into our stoplight signal. We need to remove this plug. We're going to push in on this tab, then we're going to pull out. This part can be kind of tough just because it's tight. So we'll push in, then pull out. And if you're having trouble, you can grab a small flat blade screwdriver, then push in on that connector and pull out. Just like that. Now we want to trim back our sheathing. You can use a small utility knife or a pocket knife, anything you have available. You just want to be careful not to cut any of the wires inside of our loom. Now have our wire loom stripped back, we can pull our electrical tape off of our wires. Just like so. I'm going to come back and just cut our wire loom off. To make our connection to our stoplight signal, we're going to use a quick connect and a spade connector. All we're going to do is crimp this onto the blue wire from our switch and then slide this spade connector into the back side here. So to start, we'll take our spade connector and add it to our red wire. And we'll crimp that down. Just like so. Now we can move to our brake light signal. Like I said, we're going to be using this blue wire. All we're going to do is take our quick splice, slide it over that. We want to get our wire in this little U shape of our connector. So we'll slide it over just like so. And we'll take a pair of pliers and compress that down. Just like so. Then we can grab that spade connector and just insert it right here in the back. Now you just want to plug back in your switch the same way we took it out. As far as getting our pigtail harness installed, that's all good and done. Now we just want to clean it up and then we can make our connections to the battery. We now want to locate a good spot to ground our wire. Now right down here would be a pretty good spot. It's out of the way. It's going to be easy to get our self-tapping screw in there. All we want to do is pull our wire out and we will cut our wire and toss our extra wire to the side. Now we're going to strip it back. I'm going to strip it back pretty far and then double it over just since we do have a bigger ring terminal. And now grab our ring terminal provided. We're just going to crimp that down. Okay, now we'll grab our provided self-tapper, just lower it down into the position, and now we can run our tapper into our fender. Just like that, and our wire is nice and out of the way. We actually are going to have to run our ground in a different spot. The sheet metal there where we put it the first time wasn't really thick enough to hold solid, so what we're going to do is put it on the brake pedal arm. There's a 12mm nut on the side. You're probably not going to be able to see it with the camera, but it's right there on the side of our brake pedal. So we're just going to add a ring terminal, crimp it down, and slide our ring terminal over that post on our brake pedal. Now I want to grab our 30 amp circuit breaker. We're going to mount it right here above our other one. We now want to run our white power wire over. We're just going to pull that behind our cylinder here, right around like so. We'll measure it off and we'll cut back our wire. We'll add one of our smaller ring terminals. Now we can crimp it down. Just like that. Now what we want to do is add it to the silver post on our circuit breaker. So we'll remove our nut, and we'll just slide this over and reinstall our nut. We just want to get this hand tight for now. Now we want to grab that extra wire that we cut off. With our end stripped back, we're going to add a small ring terminal. We can now crimp it down. Now this is going to go on the copper post of our circuit breaker. Good way to remember it is copper to battery, and then silver is before the circuit breaker, or from our harness. We'll slide that on, and then add our nut. We can now come back with a 3/8 socket and just tighten down our hardware. Now you don't want to put a ton of torque on this, you just want to get it nice and snug, because we don't want to break our circuit breaker. Right there should be perfect. Do that same thing for our other bolt. Now we just want to route our white wire to the battery. I'm going to zip tie it to some factory wiring down here, just to help keep it out of the way. Now I just want to take our wire and kind of measure it off to the battery. We're going to cut it right about here. Now we're going to strip back this end. And we can grab one of our ring terminals provided. After we spin that, and we'll crimp that down. Now we want to remove the 12mm socket located right there on top of our battery. If you have any other wires on there, you want to make sure to hold on to them so they don't drop. We can add our new terminal, and then reinstall our nut. Just like that. Now I just want to grab our battery cover. We're going to trim it back a little bit, just so all of our wires fit underneath of it. As far as installing our pigtail harness for our brake controller, we're completely done with that. I do need to go back and zip tie up some wiring, but other than that, it is installed. So now we're going to move on to our brake controller. You can follow along with us. Now to get our brake controller installed, we want to grab our bracket and our operating unit. Now this is probably the best location to mount ours. So we're going to take our bracket and slide it over the top and just try to get an idea of where it's going to go. Now right there is pretty good. So we'll lower down our tacancha, kind of hold that in place, and then come back with our provided screws and screw it down. We don't want to tighten it down all the way yet, because we still want some movability with it. That way we can get it nice and level. Right there looks pretty good, so we can add our screw to the other side. Now we can come back and tighten this one down. Nice and secure. Now we want to grab our tacancha. We're going to line up the holes on the side with a hole in the side of our bracket. Try to get it as close to the dash as possible. Right there looks pretty good. So we can add our hardware. Now this other side is going to be pretty tight, so we're going to use a low clearance screwdriver to get our hardware installed. Now with both sides tightened down, we can snug up the center. Using a 1/4 inch wrench, it's going to be a little bit easier to get in behind our tacancha and tighten down our hardware. Now you don't want to over tighten this because we are screwing it into plastic. We're almost there. Come back and check this one. Tighten it up a little bit more. Now we're good, it's nice and secure. Now we just want to grab our pigtail and plug it in until you hear a click. Now we're just going to clean up our wiring so they aren't hanging down on our feet. Now we have it hooked up to our tester and we can make sure our brakes are working. As you can see, when I'm pushing the brake in the vehicle, it's applying the brakes to our tester box, which in turn is our trailer. With everything hooked up and tested out, we know we're ready to hit the road. That's going to do it for our look at and the installation of the Universal 7-Way Kit on our 2015 Toyota Sienna.